Welcome to Everyday Tarot, your daily dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, healer, tarot enthusiast, and your local witch next door. And today I'll be talking about the Four of Swords. Whether you're a seasoned tarot reader or just starting to explore, this podcast offers daily insights, intuitive messages, and practical advice drawn from the cards. Each episode is designed to help you connect with your inner wisdom, find clarity in your decisions, and tap into the energy of the universe. Tune in every day, Monday to Friday, for fresh perspectives and empowering guidance from the tarot as interpreted by me. If you love the show, the best way to support it is by listening daily, leaving a review, and subscribing or following in your favorite podcast app. For monthly hangouts, tarot Q&As, and more, you can join the Everyday Tarot Patreon family. If you're local to the greater Puget Sound area, check out the Let's Talk Tarot meetup group for the latest event postings. And if you're not local to my area, you can join me for a virtual tarot card creation event Friday, June 20th at 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. I'll give you a list of recommended supplies, we'll meet online, and I'll walk you through the process of creating your own tarot cards. Get the date on your calendar now, and I'll be on the lookout for the sign-up page coming soon. If you're interested in my free PDF with the 2025 5-card tarot spread I created just for you at the beginning of this year, you can get that by joining my newsletter list. My weekly newsletter always has the most up-to-date information on my upcoming events, presentations, and more. And if you don't already know, I'm a sex and relationships therapist, seeing clients virtually all over Washington State. I love working with queer, poly, and witchy clients who might be struggling with anxiety, chronic pain or illness, communication issues, self-advocacy, and sex. You can book a free 20-minute consultation now to make sure we're a good fit to work together. And you can find the links for any of these offers in the show notes or on my website, CamilleSaunders.com/everydaytarot, in addition to the images of the cards I pull on each episode. All right, so welcome to Season 8, where I'm talking all about the Suit of Swords, going through each card one per episode. If you haven't listened to my other seasons yet, you can go ahead and check those out. Season 1 was all about tarot basics. Seasons 2 and 3 went through the major arcana and the 4 suits. Seasons 4 was about tarot and pop culture. Season 5 went through 13 common tarot spreads. Season 6 was about the Suit of Wands. 7 was about the Suit of Pentacles, and now we're here in 8 where we're talking about the Suit of Swords. If you want to hear an episode dedicated to an overview of the Suit of Swords, you can check out episode 37. And today I'm talking about the Four of Swords specifically. So images or symbols associated with a specific card are coffins, graves, meditation, temples, atonement, calm, retreat, and transformation. So the decks I'm looking at right now, where I pulled 3 different decks with my Four of Swords card. So the first one I'm looking at is the Goddess of Love Tarot deck by Gabriella Herstick and illustrated by Julie Popescu. On this card for the Four of Swords, there's 4 swords that are laying horizontally, like in the upper part of the card. There is a sort of like church, sanctuary, cathedral, temple sort of vibe down in the bottom right corner where it's like pink and purple, but it looks very like an alcove or something that you would be in if you were in like a place of worship. There are all these, I think, like peachy, white, yellow roses sort of around the temple with greenery, and then we see like what looks to me like a monarch butterfly in the middle of like the 4 swords. So again, they're sort of laying horizontally like stripes, and it's in between the second and the third sword. And then there's these 2 things that I think are sort of like a chrysalis or like a cocoon on the first sword and the third sword. So there is this aspect of like transformation or coming out of your chrysalis or cocoon or like changing into something else, like some level of transmutation going on. And in the background, we have blue sky with white clouds as we look through this sort of like sanctuary temple. And then there's pink sky with white clouds in the back of the card. I was going to see in the tarot guidebook if there was anything else about the imagery of the card. Let's see. It says, in the territory of the heart, it's key to listen to your body. But if your mind is racing, if the old patterns keep resurfacing, If anxiety or obsession takes the forefront, then it's not as easy to be in the flesh. Lean into practices that calm and soothe your mind. Breathwork, journaling, affirmations, and most of all, meditation. And the affirmation for this card says, I rest and integrate the lessons of my heart. So there also is this sort of integration aspect of it, or this being still, and also like thinking about moving forward. The swords peel back perception to reveal the truth. Again, if you think about a sword kind of cutting through things, it can be kind of like a violent act, but also it can reveal a lot. In the Desert Illuminations deck by Lindsay D. Williams, the swords suit are changed to daggers. So this is the Four of Daggers. It says a coffin is suspended in space. Inside this coffin is a skeletal figure whose arms are crossed in a pose symbolic of rest and peace. Motionless after a long battle, they are waiting to be regenerated back to life. This card represents a period of rest and contemplation. The figure presented is not necessarily dead, but is temporarily in a state of somnolence. You may be going through complicated and intense life experiences. This card appears when you need to take a step back, pause, regroup, and practice grounding exercises. Deep contemplation and personal introspection are needed immediately. Try sitting alone with yourself, away from others, to retreat from the chaos around you. And the final card that I'm looking at is part of the Sasarabito Tarot deck by Stasia Burrington. And in this one, it shows a person sort of sitting cross-legged in a sort of typical meditation pose. They almost even look like they are sitting on like meditation cushions. There's four swords that actually the tips of them are down into, oh, maybe those are hearts actually that they're kind of sitting on here. The four swords are like vertically positioned this time. And are like the tip of them is into the heart. I think there's like two hearts that the person's sitting on. And then there's also this like, I don't know, black hole at the bottom. And then we have like a black sky with stars in the background. It says, take time for yourself and heal from the wear and tear of too much mental noise. This card aligns with the Hermit and the Hanged Man. Empty your mental cup. Resist making hasty decisions. Resist the cult of being busy. In this card, the swords are standing orderly in the ground, pointy ends sheathed. They're not flung to the side all willy-nilly. Neither is the person in meditation lazily sitting around or wasting time. It says mindfulness and laziness are very similar. Be mindful, not lazy. I don't really believe in laziness, but if we were to say so, then it would be maybe like doing things without intention, or doing things because maybe they feel easy and available to us at the time, but they don't really make us grow or sort of further push us maybe right towards growth. Whereas mindfulness is a lot more about that like restoration. And again, like sitting with things that are challenging so that we can learn and grow from them, in my opinion. And it says it's all about rest, meditation, and recalibrating the mind. In the Library of Esoterica, Tarot book by Tashin, they talk about that this card is all about relaxing, recuperation, and healing. The Four of Swords is the card of respite and repose, asking each of us to make time for oneself, to step back, and to take stock. So, right, it's not just about resting, it's also about this like evaluation piece, or sort of, if we think about the butterfly and the chrysalis, sort of, right? Okay, the chrysalis is where the butterfly is sort of moving, right, from caterpillar into butterfly, but they have to rest. They have to sort of sit in this place, in this probably discomfort. I think it looks pretty uncomfortable when they emerge from the chrysalis. There's a lot of like wiggling. They have to unfurl their wings. They have to dry them out in order to fly. And it takes sometimes like hours, if not days, to emerge from that. So we also have to think about that, like during that time, right, in that isolation, if you are the Hermit card, right, which it said this is associated with, or the Hanged Man is all about perspective changing and seeing things, you know, sort of from upside down, and perhaps changing how you think moving forward. And the Hermit is about, moving into isolation or being solitary, but then finding ways to come back into community and integrate what you've learned. So it's not just, right, okay, escapism. It's about how do you come back? How do you integrate your lessons as well? In the Tarot and Astrology book by Karine Kenner, it says the Four of Swords is associated with Jupiter in Libra. It says the third and last decan of Libra is ruled by Jupiter, the greater benefic, that gives our young friend depicted in the Four of Swords a chance to catch up on some much needed sleep. So sometimes this card's depicted as someone like laying down on a bench or on a coffin with like a book on top of them, or sort of like they've been learning, they've been doing these different things. And now they have to sort of rest as they, again, sort of integrate moving forward, like how they're going to think about these things. So Libra is an air sign. Its intellectual focus is clearly symbolized by the four swords in the card. 3 swords are suspended in midair, and 1 is carved into the young man's bench like an additional framework or support. Clearly, they've been thinking, studying, analyzing, judging, and obsessing about intellectual issues, which is a very like swords thing to do. Again, swords are associated with air, and air like signs are all about like being in your head, sort of again like the thinking and studying part of it, but also like the obsessing or the anxiety side. It says but like a kindly uncle, Jupiter has come into the card and has slowed the wheel of fortune enough to give Libra a break from its usual worries and concerns. The Golden Dawn designers of this card called Jupiter in Libra the Lord of Rest from Strife, because it depicts a much needed period of rest and recuperation. And even so, the imagery of the major arcana for Libra's counterpart, the Justice card, is still in play. Justice is assigned to the entire month of Libra. The 3 of Swords above the young man look like a pair of scales in the process of balancing. So again, you can kind of look at your own cards. So in the Desert Illuminations deck, there are sort of 3 swords around the skeleton's like head, and then there's 1 sort of on top of the crossed arms. So we do have like the 3 and 1 separation there. And the other 2 decks, we have the 4 sort of in a row, but again, they are very like suspended, which is not, really how you would ever use a sword or anything. They are in this place of like balance. Let's see, and it says some versions of the card depict a knight like in an effigy or like a sculpture on a tomb. Usually these are carved and displayed in places of honor, and the imagery serves as a reminder that all soldiers in the battle of life are waiting for the ultimate reward, suggests that resurrection and new life await everyone who fights the good fight. In a tarot reading, the Four of Swords often represents a temporary reprieve from problems, a stay of execution, a retreat, or a recovery period. So in the Fearless Tarot, well, actually I'm going to do the Tarot for Change book next by Jessica Dorr, because there's an interesting part in here where she talks about the history of like the image of being on a coffin. And it says, some old interpretations of the Four of Swords say it's a card about atonement. I read once that before battle, a knight with the means to do so would have a sarcophagus made should he perish while fighting. If he survived, he would come home, lie in the tomb, and ask forgiveness. This was his way of making amends or atoning after war for all lives he had taken or crimes he'd committed. And I think that's very interesting, because when we see this sort of coffin, again, it is this sort of like, okay, we're moving on to something new, or maybe like resurrection thing. But in this way, it sort of makes me think about more of the like recognizing that, again, like death is present, or that things dying or letting go of are needed for transformation. And that also that when you take other lives, or when like death, or again, that letting go is involved, like we have to have some way to like memorialize that. And that even if, right, you do come back from war or from these hard times or heartbreak, and the Three of Swords card, like, you might look fine, but right, like we have often transformed in that space, or transmuted ourselves or changed into something else, like the butterfly that we see on the Goddess of Love tarot deck. Um, and in the Jessica Dore book, she talks about that right when we go on journeys, whether that's a relationship, a literal journey, again, a new job or moving, like sometimes that can feel promising, and sometimes it's not until we're back home alone with ourselves that we can see with painful clarity the ways in which we've outsourced our own safety and care or pawned off the tenderest parts of ourselves onto others. And sometimes, right, that like coming home to self, which again, I think like meditation is really like a space for that, right? Having to sit in the discomfort or sitting in the feelings that are coming up or how they are. Once we're alone, right, we might look at like lack of competence in caring for ourselves or find it terrifying, right? Sometimes we want to like run from that. Um, and when we do that, like when we have those just like that uncomfortable feelings or recognition, sometimes we want to run from that, like I said, or we have a choice. We can either continue acting out the same patterns or cycle of, putting it on other people or outsourcing our care that we need, or we can figure out how to go with the task of working with our fears and loneliness differently. So again, like the feelings that come up in the 2 and 3 of Swords cards, we have to sort of figure out in the 4 of Swords, like, what are you going to do with that? How are you going to, again, like transmute the heartbreak or letting go into something new? What are you going to intentionally choose to maybe do differently or be more cautious about going forward? And to think about, right, that like meditation is also this process of like, it can be this process of reflection or of just like sitting in right stillness, but also this like discomfort here. And we have to think about what is going to move us into transformation to become the butterflies when we're in from the cocoon to come out of the chrysalis, dry off our wings, right, and sort of emerge in that way, and then be able to fly off into something new, into a new place, a new scenery, and then again when we're in that place of rest or atonement or just sort of sorting things out, it can, yeah, right, this card's telling us like that can be hard. And we might want to shy away from it or ignore it or do other things. But that with the sword suit, right, because they are about this analyzing, like words also being very important, but like we have this like double-edged side to things, right, of choice and discernment, that we have the power to make decisions and to decide when running or when staying will yield the most like life or what we want to do moving forward. And that is sort of like the double-edged side to swords, that they can be right cutting in that way. They can be very harsh, but also it can allow us to sort of move forward. Um, Finally, in the Fearless Tarot book by Elliot Adam, they talk about the Four of Swords is all about restoring inner peace. Reminds you to call your attention to your body and any areas where tension has been building up. You might find it's time to let go of whatever is preventing a sense of peace and causing inner suffering. Do you feel inner peace or have you been suffering? When is the last time you gave yourself a relaxing midday nap? Do you need a break from the stress that's built up? It says often in the card depicted that there's the stained glass window in the corner of the Four of Swords with the word peace in it, pax, Latin for peace. And aside from encouraging rest, this card asks if you're feeling that inner peace, right? This again is about that sorting out and deciding and thinking about what we need to let go of, to surrender, and the idea of trying to control outcomes or going on a path that no longer brings rewards are sort of examples of like the suffering. So identifying anything that's interfering with your inner peace, maybe that's again like a life path that you're not happy with, something that needs to change, that you sort of know needs to be changed, but maybe you've been ignoring it or trying to just get through it. And it says, wouldn't it be a relief to finally let the source of your suffering go and see what new wonders await you? We're often very good at rationalizing why we need to suffer, but there's no real rationalization for it. You can choose inner peace and let go of whatever you've outgrown that keeps preventing you from being at peace within yourself. Okay, so let's dive in and see what the cards have to say today on this topic. I'm going to be pulling from the Citadel, a fantasy oracle with an Inkrite, as I have the last few episodes. This is my newest deck, and I'm still enjoying getting to know it, pulling cards for each episode. So yeah, I'm going to be thinking about how do we actually sit in meditation and mindfulness in that sometimes discomfort, acknowledging where we've been and also where we want to go, even when it's challenging. How do we, again, move out of the chrysalis or the cocoon into transforming into what we want in our lives, into the butterfly, and being able to actually take ourselves, right, fly off to where we want to go. And how do we recognize and integrate the things that we have let go of or don't want to hold on to anymore, and we want to move into a new pattern or sort of vibration as moving forward. The Alchemist, which is all about transmutation, right? So balance, invention, and destruction. I love that. Okay, so let's look this one up in my book here. And the Alchemist is part of the Academy group. So the Citadel, again, is sort of this idea of like everyone's in this city, and there's like the court in the middle, and then outside of that you have libraries, temples, schools, and businesses that are collectively known as the Academy. And throughout that, people that work and live here flourish in acts of learning and ingenuity, striving to discover the unknown and create new wonders that will amaze the world. And right, being an alchemist falls right into that. So I pulled this upright, so I'm going to read the upright definition for this, and it says, colored liquids and strange smelling chemicals bubble from inside of glass apparatus. A creature watches you from the inside of the bottle, blinking its single eye, and in the middle of the chaos sits the alchemist, surrounded by an infinity of notes. It takes genius to create, and the alchemist is the embodiment of invention. They understand the core principle of creation, solve et coagula. Something must be destroyed in order to create anew. The place of safety must be burned down in order to rebuild from the ashes. The alchemist is not afraid to take drastic measures in order to achieve their goals. In order to create, be it a new project, a new chapter in your life, or perhaps a new relationship, something must first be dismantled in order to make space. But in alchemy, nothing is ever truly destroyed. The new is built on foundations of what has come before, and there are lessons to be learned from the rubble. So, right, this card's really telling us that, like, it is a challenging process, right, to integrate, to move from what was the thing that we need to sort of destroy, right, to build, to come through the ashes, right? We're going to think of like a phoenix mythology. The bird, right, is burns, turns to ashes, and then is reborn from its ashes over and over and over. Grows old again, and then does the same process, right? Which again is about the idea that nothing's ever truly destroyed. Again, when you think of alchemy, like you're mixing things, you might be melting things down or creating things, but all of those things come together to create something new. And it's not just that you're discarding them, right? You don't have to let go, or like you don't have to ignore the things you've been through, or the traumas, or the situations, or the people, or the jobs, or the things that have all sort of made you who you are today. And right, there is this aspect of like you also can't just continue to hold on to them so tightly that you can't move forward, right? This card's telling us that we have to actually dismantle what we went through in the past in order to make space for something new. Again, if you think about like in your space, right, in order to put a new piece of furniture in your home, you might have to take down, donate, get rid of things in order to make space for new. So if you've been feeling challenged about moving forward, about integrating, about doing things differently, we have to recognize that we do sort of have to like get rid of things, burn things down in our past things in order to have space for new, right? Maybe why it hasn't been happening is because we've still been holding on to all those old things and trying to shove our new piece of furniture into the room as well. And again, then it just makes you feel cluttered, or there's not actually space, or now you can't get around your desk or your couch or whatever, right? We have to actually get rid of things, which can be its own challenging process. Again, because sometimes that can be people or jobs or relationships, or maybe sometimes those literal things, in order to make space for the new things that we really want, right? That we're being intentional about in our lives. All right, so I'll stop there for today. So links for the tarot decks I talk about will always be in the show notes on my website if you'd like to look at them or purchase them. And thanks for joining me today on Everyday Tarot. Just as a reminder, the podcast comes out daily, Monday through Friday for all of 2025. All right, see you soon. Bye-bye.